What is the world coming to? We are still confused about the real estate commission. So in this video, I'm going to hopefully clear this all up. Just this week, I had my own client who I sat down and explained this whole thing to them, and I thought they got it, and they still don't got it. And I think the reason for that is because the media and all the news did a major disservice to the consumers out there, pitching what they think this real estate lawsuit was all about. So today I'm here to clear things up, tell you what's really going on, and hopefully when you go to sell your house or when you go to purchase your house, there's going to be no surprises. Let's get into it. Okay, let me put this on the screen for you. There was a $418 million settlement with the National Association of Realtors in real estate commissions regarding their antitrust litigation. It was a big deal. Doesn't matter where you were, you heard all about it. Now, I think most of the buyers and the sellers and most of the consumers out there were misled as to exactly what took place because they don't really understand how the real estate commissions actually worked. There was three major reasons why this lawsuit came about. The first one being there was no transparency to the buyer as to how much their buyer's agent or their buyer's agent representation was being compensated by the seller. So in the old world, what would happen is the listing agent would sit down with the seller and say, how much are we paying the buyer? How much you paying me? And usually it was 2.5, a total of 5%, or 3%, and 3% makes total of 6%. What I mean by that is it would be 3% to the listing agent and 3% to the buyer's agent. And then they would take that 3%, list it in MLS, and only the buyer's agent saw that 3%. The buyer themselves had no idea how the buyer was being compensated. It was not full disclosure. The other thing is most of the consumers out there had no idea that they could negotiate those commissions. So you're not required to pay 3% on each side or 2.5% on each side. Everything was negotiable back then. Your agent just never told you for a couple of reasons. They may not have known, or they were just trying to make it simple, or they called it the industry standard. That's called commission fixing, and that is illegal. The big concern for most of the sellers out there is they're like, wait a second, if I offer the buyer's agent 2% in MLS, but my neighbor's offering 3%, then it's more likely that the buyer's agent's going to steer their buyer to the 3% house rather than my 2%. And the answer is, yeah, I mean, that could potentially happen. We can talk about how the industry's changed and the buyers are driving demand. But that was another premise behind the lawsuit that was a little concerning. So the higher commission that you would offer that buyer's agent, there was a perception, and the sellers felt a little hijacked that, oh, I got to participate with these commissions, or the buyer's agents may not show my house. Ugh, I hate that. And the third reason, in my opinion, this lawsuit really came about was most of the buyers are making offers. They don't know how much their buyer's agent's making, and they should have the ability to negotiate their buyer's agent commission. So if they're making an offer at $1 million and the seller's offering a 3% commission, the buyer's like, well, I want to reduce my buyer's agent commission to 1%, and I'll offer you less, right? Because I'm willing to either pay him out, or I got my super discount realtor who's willing to take 1% commission. So the price of the house was really impacted by these buyer's agents' commissions, right? So that was the whole premise behind this big lawsuit. And in my opinion, what's taken place, or what the perception is after all these announcements, was, oh, yay, the sellers don't have to pay buyer's agent commission. No, that's not what happened. What ended up happening is a whole different way that we are now signing our agreements with our buyer's agent and our listing agent. So the three things that came out of the settlement is, number one, commissions are no longer posted in MLS for the buyer's agent. They no longer have a field for that in MLS. It's published nowhere. Number two is that there needs to be transparency as to how much that buyer's agent is actually making. And the third thing that came out of this settlement is that every single buyer needs to have a buyer-broker agreement with their buyer's agent before they can even show you any properties. And in this buyer's agreement, it states how much the buyer is going to compensate the buyer's agent. It could be a percentage, it could be a flat fee, right? It could be a tiered thing. And in that document, it can be specific to one property or a county, and there's also a duration of time. Either way, that buyer's agent cannot go show you properties unless that agreement is signed. It's like me being your listing agent selling your home. I need a listing agreement, and we talk about, how much you're going to pay me to sell your house. And until that agreement is signed, I can't go put your house on the market because I need to have an agreement in place. That's the same thing with the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent cannot go show you properties or make offers on your behalf until you have this buyer-broker agreement in place. And no, this is not just in California because we're fussy and hard to get along with out here. It's all across the United States of America. If you are working with a buyer's agent, they will be talking to you about this agreement because this is one of the rules that came out of the National Association of Realtors settlement. So how it works right now is that me, Audra Lambert, as your listing agent, I sit down with the seller and I'm like, hey seller, how much we're gonna sell your house for and what's my compensation, right? And we come up with an agreement. And in that process, we never talk about how much we're gonna give the buyer's agent because we don't know. It's all negotiable now. We don't know. We don't even talk about it. It's not in our listing agreement. The only thing that I do ask my seller is if they're willing to cooperate with buyer agent compensation. He can say yes, he can say no. And if he says yes, there is a designation in MLS that says yes, the seller is willing to cooperate with buyer agent compensation. It could be a penny, it could be millions of dollars, but the bottom line is we're not disclosing upfront how much that seller is willing to pay the buyer's agent because it's all negotiable. Let me show you how that works. The buyer's agent will present an offer from the buyer to the seller, and in that offer, it actually has a request for the seller to pay a certain percentage or flat fee or whatever the agreement states to the buyer's agent to cover the representation. Now, the seller at that point can decide whether they want to agree to it or not. They can negotiate that compensation. They can say, listen, I don't want to pay you 2.5%. This isn't a strong offer. I want to offer you 2%, or I want to offer you a flat fee. They can come back and counter anything they want. And then when it gets lobbed back to the buyer can then decide, well, let's see here. I have an agreement with my buyer's agent for 2.5%. The seller's countering me 2%, so I got to come up with that extra 50 basis points. They could do a couple things. They can ask the buyer's agent if he's willing to reduce their commission, or, they can figure out a different arrangement outside of escrow. Either way, that whole entire process is negotiable. Now, the catch here is that buyer's agent cannot present an offer to the seller with a certain commission in that offer unless there's a buyer-broker agreement. Those are the rules. So there's no funny business going on. There are contracts in place for any buyer's agent that presents an offer on the buyer's behalf. That is really important that you understand that. Okay, where it gets a little uncomfortable is we have buyers who have agreements with their buyer's agent, a formal agreement. And let's say in this example, it's a 2% agreement. And they go make an offer to a seller, and the seller goes, okay, I'll accept your price and terms, but I ain't paying your buyer's agent commission. I'll give you $500. That's all I'm going to pay, and it's up to you, buyer, to go pay your own representation. And so what'll happen is the buyer and the buyer's agent have to work it out because the buyer's agent has a legal binding contract with that buyer that they owe them 2% of the sales price. So the buyer's agent and the buyer can work something out on the side, but most buyers right now are barely able to make their down payment and they can't come up with the additional money to pay their buyer's agent. So they have a choice. They negotiate something on the side or they pass on the opportunity and they go find another property to purchase where a seller will cooperate with their buyer agent compensation. Happening every single day. This is how we're doing it. Now the big change that's happened here in the last 3-4 years is that the housing market is halting. It's cold, it's stagnant, it's slow. Inventories nationwide are skyrocketing. Okay, we have over 30% more inventory compared to last year on a national level. Now, a lot of you live in those micro markets where it's still booming and inventories are really scarce, but the majority of America right now are really starting to see those inventories climb. The negotiations on most properties right now are definitely being more negotiable than they ever have. And I'll put some articles on the screen so you'll believe me, but I'm telling you, I'm boots on the ground. I'm working 80, 90 hours a week. I know what I'm talking about. So if you are a seller right now, I would highly advise that you work and are open to every offer that comes across your desk. Okay, quick intermission. My name is Audra Lambert. For those of you who have never met me before, I live in Orange County, California. course, if you're buying or selling a home in my area, please reach out to me. More importantly, please subscribe to my channel. I'm trying to get this information out to the masses. My goal is to educate America and put the power back into the consumer's hands when they are either buying or selling a home. All right, let's get back into it. So how much do buyer or broker agents make? Well, according to Veravita, I will put it on the screen for you, the study, and I will also link it down in the notes, because if I were to tell you what I think the averages are, I could get in trouble because I could potentially be charged with commission fixing, which I'm not going to do. So we're going to blame this all on Veravita. So apparently, before the settlement, most buyer's agents on average were making 2.45% compensation. Now, after the lawsuit, they're making 2.37% commission, so a slight reduction. Now, you have to realize that when this settlement came out, a lot of buyer's agents were like, oh my gosh, I'm out of a job, I'm gonna get zero compensation. And it's pretty remarkable that it's only a slight reduction, because I think most buyers wanna have their own representation. And we did see a massive shift in the market, in my opinion, and in my experience in my area. So when an offer was presented to the seller was a little more apt to consider this offer, primarily because there weren't a lot of offers coming in. So if it was a good offer, he's like, yeah, you know what, maybe I consider that. So I think it was received, I would just say, more positively than initially anticipated. But let's go through a few numbers here. So Veravita, apparently, luxury homes, anything over $1 million, the average buyer's commission went from 2.22 to 2.17. The mid-range market, anywhere from 500 to $1 million, was very stable at 2.26% buyer's agent commission. And the entry-level market, anything from about 500K and less, actually bumped up a little bit. It went from 2.42 to 2.46. So we are seeing that the buyer's agent commissions are actually quite stable. For some of you who are pulling your hair out right now going, what? I feel duped. I thought for sure I didn't have to pay for buyer's agent compensation. Please hear me on my channel. You don't have to. But understand, everything comes down to, net sheets and how much everybody's walking away with. And understand right now, we have super high mortgage rates right now, and buyers are really low in demand, meaning we just don't have as many buyers out there. So it's really about affordability. So if you do want to sell your home, I would say just make sure that you understand the market you're in. And I always tell all my sellers, you just want to be open to all offers. Just be open. We don't know how it's all going to work out. And believe it or not, I'm still selling a lot of homes, but it's just getting harder and harder, and the negotiations are getting stiffer and stiffer. I mentioned that the market's definitely correcting, and I've been saying this for a while, and a lot of you are rolling your eyes going, what does she know? I know, because I'm boots on the ground. Let me put this article on the screen for you from the New York Post. It says here, for the first time in 12 years, home sellers outnumber buyers. Home sellers outnumber buyers. You know what that's called? That's called a buyer's market. And the next sentence, it says, and it could mean lower prices soon. When you have more homeowners that are selling their homes and less buyers, there's an imbalance in the market. And the only way to entice these buyers to buy these homes is if the prices come down or the mortgage rates have to come down, where the buyers find these homes more affordable. I will link this article down below. The second article is home prices in the biggest 20 markets decline for the first time in over 2 years. Here's where they're expected to fall most. So I will link this down below. There's a ton of information out there. We're starting to get the reports where the housing market is definitely cooling. In my area, it's taking 2 to 3 times longer to get homes under contract. And my sellers are like, Audra, what's taking so long? Well, what's happening? Are we in a correction? No, it's taking longer. I don't think housing prices are falling right now. However, if the inventory continues to rise, the mortgage rates continue to rise, we could potentially start to see those prices start to trend down. So when you are presented with an offer and your buyer is asking for a compensation to be agreed upon when they're presenting a very strong offer, I'm just saying you don't have to agree to it, but be open to it, because the market definitely is changing. And I think half the reason why this whole commission change has been received well is because the market has corrected, and most sellers want to work with buyer's agents because they understand the market that we're in. If this whole change happened during COVID, let me tell you, there'd be a much lower compensation right now because it was a seller's market. And in my opinion right now, without a doubt, we are in a buyer's market right now. Buyers are the one driving demand. Very important concept. Okay, folks, I've been doing this for over 20 years, and there's a phenomenon that I've been, experiencing here over the years. And that is when the market starts to really pick up, like during COVID, most of the sellers and the buyers are like, we don't need our agent. We'll just go direct to the listing agent. Or, the sellers are like, I'm just going to sell my house for sale by owner. I don't need these pesky agents. They're overpaid. They're greedy. They suck me dry. I ain't no way am I going to, use those agents. But as soon as the market corrects, like it is right now, guess what? They're like, where's my listing agent? Where's my buyer's agent? My buyer's agent's going to negotiate for me and find me the best deal. And the sellers are like, I need a listing agent to do all the marketing because no one's calling me. And oh my gosh, I need help. I need someone to tell me what's going on. So the market's correcting right now. And if you are selling or buying a home, you need to find the best representation that you can possibly have. And let me tell you something, folks, there are deals being done right now, but 10% of the realtors out there are doing it. And I happen to be in that 10%. So if you are selling your home or looking for a buyer's agent, find the best one you possibly can. Now, I have a referral network. I'm happy to refer you agents in your area. We go to a lot of work to make sure that they are in good standing and they have experience and they have proper experience to represent you well. There is a link down below you can fill out. We'll coordinate for you. There's also a link down below for our resource guide. There's questions that you can ask these listing agents or these buyer's agents. Also, several other helpful guides in there, like what comes up on a home inspection, a staging checklist, all these really good guides. So link down below. It's free. I'm here to help you. But please do me a favor because I get these calls all the time. All the time. I got like 5 this week.
Audra, why is my house not selling? I think it's my agent.
And I go look up their agent. They've never sold a house before. Okay, folks, if your agent is doing a good job, they're going to be very candid and honest with you and have a strategy for selling your home. So please do yourself a favor, spend the extra time, find the right agent, get educated, and let's just be humble in this market right now because the market is shifting and we do have to make sure the seller and the buyer are working together. Okay, I'm done with my soapbox. And for those of you who have listened last week, you can hear my voice is still kind of deep, but I am feeling better, so thanks for all your wishes. Really appreciate you watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.